Welcome to Season 5 of She Ventures. I am your host, Doria Lavanino. She Ventures is a podcast about women and their work and life pivots. I believe in the power of storytelling. I also believe that if you change one woman's life, you start to change a family or a community. Our mission is to elevate the diverse stories of everyday women in their work. One promise, no mansplaining ever. Sit back, listen, and hit subscribe. We'd love to hear from you. You can find us at sheventurespodcast.com. Yay! These two female tech founders were on She Ventures this time last year, and we get to speak to them again. In their first episode, they covered launching their startup in the Midwest through Techstars Accelerator, and they told us how they went through raising an oversubscribed round of $1.4 million for their work app called then Quick Hire. Since then, they've been very busy. And this year, the Kansas-based sisters have rebranded their app and company to WorkTorch and raised an additional $2.2 million in venture funding. Here to tell us about the past 12 months are sisters Deborah Gladney and Angela Muhwezi-Hall. Welcome again.
Thank you so much for having us. We're glad to be back.
Here.
Yay. And what a busy 12 months it has been for both of you.
Yes, it has.
I listened to just the end of our last conversation last year, where I had asked both of you what your goals were for the coming year. I don't remember who said it, but one of you did say to bring awareness to women and minorities being underfunded and to recognize the milestones and barriers. And to give context to listeners who don't know, women of color founders, tech founders, raise only 0.5, less than 0.5% of venture capital. Women overall, not much better, 2.3%. So how have you been able to handle the milestones and the barriers? What have they been for you this year? Let's start with Angela.
Yeah, well, thanks again for having us. We're really thrilled to be back, and even just reflecting on this past year, it's really nice to do. I'll tell you, it has definitely been a challenge. Raising capital is already hard enough, and as you said, the statistics of being Black women, it's 1,000 times harder than our counterparts. But we were raising during a time where people were unsure if we were going to go into a recession as a country. Previously, the round that we did last year, we found that a lot more VCs were willing to take risks, were willing to hear us out and things like that. We were coming off of a time that there were a lot of VCs that had diversity and inclusion emphasis or things that they wanted to go after. And so our first round of funding, you said it was oversubscribed. We really felt that people were willing to hear us out. This time around, VCs were tight with their pockets already because they were unsure what the future held. For us, it made it so much harder to raise what people may have to have as far as their monthly revenues and their user base and where their tech is at and things like that, what they were requiring for people going for a seed raise. For us, it was almost as if they were expecting us to be at a Series A or B level with our MRR, with our tech, with our user base. We just had to give above and beyond and show, that we're on the right path, probably more than what people were used to at our stage. We were lucky that during our first round, we were able to connect with so many great funds and investors that a lot of them did choose to follow on in this next round. And then also with the new VCs that we were able to connect with, they truly believed in us and they truly understood our vision. But it just was so much harder. And Deborah probably can tell you more about that just because what we were facing as a country was so uncertain.
Absolutely. Deborah, what do you want to add?
She hit it nail on the head. Just with the macroeconomic factors at play, people were already being more conservative. But it's really interesting because it kind of shows people's really true underlying bias, because what they felt as risky investments were minorities, were women, because those were the ones that really suffered. Now, overall, yes, investing as a whole peeled back a little bit last year, but we were hit extremely, extremely hard. But yeah, as Angie was saying, it's almost like and this is nothing new. It's like we have to show up with twice as much to have twice as less. The valuation that we went with was extremely, extremely fair. And honestly, a lot of people thought it was, a great deal, right? Especially for the amount of traction that we had acquired in such little amount of time. It's not like we were a charity. We have a real business, a real growing business. But nevertheless, when we had that goal of saying we wanted to shine a spotlight on it, it meant that we also had to continue, that we couldn't give up either. The harder that we worked, the more milestones we were able to achieve, the more awareness that we were able to bring, but also the more that we are changing the face of what entrepreneurship looks like in this country. And that to me is the important thing.
100%. Not that you need my validation. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think it's incredible what the two of you have achieved. I was wondering, and also it's interesting to me because while I understand that we're in a recession or recession-ish territory, I'm not really quite clear where we are. I don't know if anyone is. I thought it may be because you had already received venture capital that it might be actually easier the second time around. But you're finding that was not so.
Exactly. We thought the same thing, honestly. And not just that, we were really proud of our traction. We had 4x our revenue, and we had acquired some really big brands. And so we were just really excited because we knew that we actually had a really great business story to tell in just a short amount of time. So there's that. But yes, even because we had raised before. But I will say it wasn't easy. But to Angie's point, I think we were able to do it, though, because we had raised before. Like Angie said, a big chunk of this round was follow-on. So it was existing investors that were already invested, and they were able to have a front row seat at the progress they had made, the progress we had made. So had we not had them to anchor us, I don't think this round would have come together at all.
That's interesting. So it did help in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Today, how do you, I don't want to assume, face discrimination as women of color tech founders?
I think that going into it, and this was our first tech company, for me personally, it was my first time going into entrepreneurship. Deborah has started businesses before. So I was extremely new to the whole experience. And I just don't think I was expecting to face discrimination. I wasn't expecting to feel the biases, whether they were overt or covert or however they came across. I just wasn't ready for it. I was shocked by some of the experience that we had. And so now I know what to expect. It makes it 10 times easier, especially going through this with a co-founder, and that co-founder happens to be another woman of color, and she happens to be my sister, because we can have real frank conversations, debriefing after meetings that didn't feel right. How can we approach this, or setting our expectations, knowing what we have gone through previously. So this time around, unfortunately, I had to prepare myself mentally for the biases that were going to come our way. That first time around, I was just shocked left and right that we were experiencing some of those situations. So we just had to really brace ourselves, and we're continuing to have to do so, because now that we're already looking towards that Series A and what's coming next for us. And we already know, all right, we're going to have to make sure our benchmarks are even higher than our counterparts and higher than what people are expecting, to be able to make sure that there is no one saying that we can't do things just because we're minorities or women.
And it's interesting because, as Angie said, a lot of the times we would have to debrief after calls, because No one has ever said, I'm not doing business with you because you're Black. I'm not doing business with you because you're a woman. Like no one has ever actually come out and say that. But
It's
as
not
Andrew was
overt.
saying, yeah, exactly. We do spend a lot of time debriefing like, man, what was that? So as an example, a lot of times during pitches, just a lot of investors would be shocked that I speak well. And they'll say, wow, you speak well. And I would get it all the time. And I noticed that I was getting it more than my other founders that I think speak well too. I mean, we all speak kind of the same. I don't really
Right.
know. But then, as Angie and I were talking about it, is it because they're not used to someone who looks like me, maybe perhaps not having an accent or not having whatever, It's little microaggressions that we'll experience along the way, or not even just with investors, but even potential customers. When they get on a demo, they don't expect to see Angela and myself as the founders of this company. There's just a lot of things that you kind of have to ask yourself, okay, if they can't really give me a good reason why they said no, then what is it? So it just makes you have those questions. But also, that's why it's so important to build resiliency, because you are going to get a lot of no's. I think founders, regardless of what you look like, are going to get a lot of no's. But the reality is, I think we get more no's than others.
What advice would you give women of color or women generally, who do face these microaggressions day in and day out? And they can be really demoralizing. And I know, yes, we need to be resilient. We need to keep going. We need to do twice as much to prove ourselves. But how do you keep yourself fueled?
I think building a village is really important. I'm lucky because, as Angie said, my co-founder is my sister, and so she is my village in this. My husband is my village in this. But really kind of having people in your circle that you can talk to about these things, strategize with, because sometimes you might need to take action on some of these, and having that village that you can go to, that you can bounce ideas off, but that you can share and also make you feel like, gosh, okay, I'm not crazy or I'm not alone. Sometimes it's just, that might be the boost in and of itself to help you keep going.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
Yes.
sometimes just knowing that you're not alone in this fight. So that is what has helped me. Angela, I don't know if you have something else.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that building a village is crucial, but also really believing in your product and being unwavering. Of course, you may have to pivot here and there, but really believing in what you are doing and the impact that you are wanting to make. Because one thing you cannot deny is progress and data and what you're building. And so when we were able to say, hey, but we grew our customer base by this much and we 4x'd our MRR, these were facts that people just had to, you just can't deny that. I think the more that you are just convicted in your product, and the more that you're really just kind of delving into your customer base, what they are using, what they like, they don't like, the better you will be able to raise.
Makes a lot of sense. And I think also I really like what you both said about finding your village, because I feel like a lot of it almost is, if you're alone, it's like there's this kind of gaslighting thing. Like you begin to question even your own take on things. So that's tremendously valuable. Let's talk about what you're doing. So I noticed that you have a new name for your company. If you could just walk us through why you decided to rebrand. And for listeners who may not have heard the first episode, what is it that your app does and who is it for?
I'll give kind of the high level overview of our company and what we do. But I also think the name change will be helpful if Angie kind of gives that backstory of how the company even came about. I think that'll also explain why we changed the name. But in a nutshell, WorkTorch is a career discovery platform for the service economy. What that means is we partner with job seekers to find the right job, but more importantly, we come alongside them to help them find the right advancement opportunities. By doing so, by helping them look at service industry jobs as a career and not just a gig, the employers end up winning by holding onto talent longer. Attrition in this industry is a massive problem. The average service industry worker stays only about a month and 26 days. We see this as valuable on both ends. Employees are able to find fulfilling careers and supporting their family, supporting their dreams, and employers are able to hold on to talent longer.
Doing a little bit of the backstory. So the idea actually came about a number of years ago. I used to work in education, and I was a career and educational advisor in inner city schools in Los Angeles. And I found that if you were a college-bound student, there were so many resources for you, whether it was apps, websites, or even people just pouring into you and giving you advice as to that next step. But if you were going directly into the workforce, there were really no tools on how to navigate careers and progressions. And, hey, I'm starting out as a cashier. What's next? So I talked about this with Deborah about just like the disparity I felt like as an individual who went to college and went down this corporate white collar path. It was pretty much laid out what I was supposed to do. But for these students, I was like, there's something missing. We need to be helping them. And they're so talented. That's when we really started to delve into, first, we wanted to make it easy for people to find work and to take those barriers off, because that was a huge issue. A lot of times people would come with those paper applications, or they would be lengthy websites and all of that. And so that's why we started with the name Quick Hire, because that's what we wanted to do. But when we got into it, we realized that it's the career progression, showing people how they can go from that cashier to that district manager. We found that around 80% of our user base, they want to stay in the service industry. And so that people think that these are like a means to an end or dead end jobs or things like that. It's like, no, a lot of people, their favorite job was when they worked at a restaurant, or they worked in retail, but they thought that was just something they did before college. But there's a number of individuals that want this to be their long-term career. And we wanted to make sure that they knew those pathways and were connected to companies that had clear opportunities for progression.
That's so important. And I think that there's been such a shift, right, in the last decade, maybe longer, as college becomes more and more expensive and inaccessible to people. And some people just don't want to go to college, and that's a perfectly valid option. Finding those opportunities and, to your point, the progression that exists after you start at your entry level position, I think is essential. Talk a little bit about your growth in terms of, I know that you're expanding to 6 areas, and I'm just curious, like how many employees you have and how many job seekers. And I know I saw like Dunkin' Donuts is one of your clients. I was like, woo, good, right on. So how has that been?
It's been really fun, first and foremost. Just a little bit about our growth. So the last time we talked, we probably had about 10,000 job seekers on our platform. I think we're approaching 60,000 job seekers on our platform. We also have been able to work with some really, really cool brands. Like you said, we've been able to work with Dunkin'. We're working with Hobby Lobby, Freddy's Frozen Custards, so many cool brands, Price Chopper. We've been able to really kind of expand and not just have just one staple brand, which is really, really nice. And then for the last year or so, we really have been focused in on Kansas and really wanting to get the playbook right before we continued on to expand. That's really where we want to go now, is we really want to start expanding into additional markets, as you mentioned. And we do have a huge focus on more of the underserved markets. We're trying to avoid the coast, et cetera. And so, there's a number of markets that we're looking at expanding into, but we're really excited about it because we've been able to work with some great companies along the way.
And Homewood Suites too.
And yep, Homewood Suites. It's been fun.
I'm excited for you. And I wanted to ask you, so I looked on your website and it's free for job seekers. And then for companies, as I understand it, it could be a month-to-month service, anywhere from $199 to $899. And then I would imagine enterprise might be a whole other deal. So why should an employer advertise with you? I'm sure you've gotten this question so many times that you're like, oh my God, not this again. Instead of Indeed or LinkedIn.
So we're specifically first and foremost for the service industry, and not just that, we're working with individuals who want to be in the service industry and grow within the service industry. So our talent pool is a little more focused in some of our competitors who are more broad and who may, you may post a job and sometimes people don't even realize they applied. That will not happen on our platform. And then also we go beyond what's on that typical resume. We let employers know what individuals have as their personal goals. They're able to tell us, hey, today I am a cashier, but tomorrow I want to be a supervisor or a lead cook or whatever the case may be. Those employers are able to see right off the bat that this individual wants to grow and has potential to grow within their company. And so I definitely think that it's more about who they're trying to connect with and people who are trying to really grow within this particular workforce.
Mm-hmm. Angie's right. So the difference between us and others is that on our platform, it's about finding people. On others, it's mainly about finding bodies. And that for us is really a huge difference. Then taking it a step further, we now have some retention tools available as well. Once you put in all that effort into finding the right person, it's more cost effective to get that person to stay than to have to keep backfilling constantly. We are continuing to grow the suite of products on the retention side. For example, we send out automated text messages to ask your employees, how was your first day? How do you like your manager? Things like that can help them get out ahead of quick quits. We also have the ability to integrate with applicant tracking system and HR systems so that we can better track their churn and let them know when a store might be understaffed, et cetera. So we're really excited about that side of the platform and the features that we're continuing to roll out on that side.
I'm excited to see that too. And you've always been for marginalized workers and helping them upskill. And so that is, I assume, what you're going to continue to broaden as time goes on.
Exactly. And that's the whole meaning behind WorkTorch. We wanted to basically be a guiding light to a better career, a better workforce. And so that is really what we're about and wanting to continue to help people do.
And I was just thinking too that churn is so expensive. And it's something that I think many people don't think about if they're not in business, but the cost of replacing an employee is a lot. So even if someone doesn't care about the human side of it, which would be sad, but just the pure economics of it makes sense.
Exactly. And that's what also this segment of the workforce, especially the employer side, is interested in. They're like, give me the data, just give me it. Is my store understaffed? What store is understaffed? How much money am I losing? Like that is really what helps them make more informed decisions about their business.
So they're bringing you on almost in a consultative role, really, to evaluate.
Exactly. Yeah. And so our goal is to make sure that like our technology is essentially a consultant so that they can make better informed decisions.
That's so cool because, it's very scalable. You have both become, obviously, examples of women of color founders and how you can move forward in startup culture. How does that responsibility that goes with that, how does that make each of you feel? How does it manifest in your lives?
It's a good question because candidly, it's something that I've personally struggled with because we have so much that we need to do on the business side. We have so many milestones that we need to hit. We don't have everything figured out. We're trying to work on our unit economics. We're trying to figure out all these different things before we start expanding. It's really hard to be an example when you don't feel like you've really made it, And that is also something that is hard to clearly communicate too, when you're asked to go to these speaking engagements, do all of these things and people want to talk to you or put you on whatever, it's really difficult because there was a speaking engagement that we were involved in and we were there with the founder of AOL. It's like, what? It's really difficult. But what I had to realize was that because we're one of the few, if we want this to change, we're going to have to speak along our journey. We're going to have to speak along the way. And that's the only way that I think that we'll start to see a difference, is the more that we can get out there and shed light on our journey and our experiences along the way. That'll either bring more awareness to some of the barriers that our fellow founders face, or hopefully it will encourage others to take that idea and launch that idea so that we can continue to change the face and get more diverse, bright minds a seat at the table. And so that to me is why every time somebody asks, hey, can you be a part of this, or can you join in this, or can you mentor this person? While I can't do everything, I do try to do as much as I can, because I know that's what's going to be required in order to see the change in the world that I want to see.
Absolutely. 100%. And then also the weight of it, and the weight of our successes and failures, or, whatever the case may be, could potentially impact that next Black woman that we may or may not even know. So being able to have a successful story, or being able to raise or have a successful exit, or acquire new businesses, or, whatever the case may be, these VCs, they have a lot running through their mind. And if they are working with us, honestly, that does impact someone else's, how they view Black women as a whole. Because there are so few of us, we become the representation of the whole. This is something that it weighs heavy on me, because I want that next Black woman coming up behind us or alongside us to have someone to invest in them, because they said, well, look what WorkTorch was able to do. Look what those two Black women were able to do. We need more. We need to invest in more people of color, into more women, or whatever the case is. So that's another factor that I am like, we're not just doing this for ourselves, but we're doing this for other women and people of color that we may not ever meet.
That's an incredible response. And like where you are today in your journey, if you each could give, and it's all right if it's crossover, because you may have some of the same tips, the Angela and the Deborah of 5 years ago, 3 tips.
Ooh, 5 years.
About entrepreneurship. What would they be?
The tips for me, especially 5 years ago, first is like, I would stop caring so much about what other people think, for sure, and not seeking validation from others, but seeking validation from yourself. And that kind of feeds into the next one as well, is just really kind of protecting your passion, protecting your idea, protecting that. And I say that because when you have an idea, when you are excited about something, or you're ready to do something that others have not really done before, if you broadcast it to the wrong people, they may project their fears on you. And a lot of people get stuck there, because then they start second guessing what they're doing, right? So like if I would have told too many people about the idea that Angela and I were building for WorkTorch, I would have been like, are you crazy? You're about to have your 3rd baby. You have all of these obligations, you got student loans, you have all these things that you have. And had I shared it with the wrong people, I think I would have been too scared to do it. So again, protecting your passion, whatever that is, as much as possible. And then I think the next thing I would say is just this journey. Angie and I were just talking about this the other day, because we were trying to figure out how to put it in a quote. But essentially, that whatever you're working towards, knowing that it's a marathon and it's not a sprint, and making progress, some days it's literally just taking 1 step. You may not take 10 steps, whatever, and that's okay. Sometimes it's really just about putting one foot in front of the other, even if it is just 1 step. And being proud of yourself for doing that, and continuing to just move forward in some capacity, even if it is just, okay, I'm just going to at least send this one email to this investor that I've been scared to email today. I think that you'll come to find that you'll reach that finish line faster than you think, if you just take it 1 step at a time.
100%. Oh man, 5 years ago, I mean...
And I was like, I was a hot mess. I was a hot mess 5 years ago.
I would say my advice is that sometimes we just get bound by our own thoughts of what we think we're supposed to be doing in our lives and the journeys that we're supposed to be on and what that may look like. And I think that as people, it's okay to be multifaceted and explore what those other ideas that come to you. It's okay to take risks on that, and that you may not 5 years ago, you may think that, oh, I'm going down this path, but you may be going down a whole different world, but you just have to be open to it because the world will already put so many limiting factors on you. The last person who needs to be putting limitations on them is yourself. So I would just say to really go after and explore every single idea or things that's tugging on your heart. Because like I said, this idea came about, I think I had it on a vision board in 2017, but literally the reason why I didn't go after it was because I was like, I know nothing about tech. That's not my lane. I have no idea. I don't know how to start a company. That's not me at all. But now that we have created WorkTorch and we're continuing to grow, as Deborah said, the amount of users that we have, those are thousands of people's lives that we've been able to impact just by us deciding to go and move forward. So that's what I would say is just do not limit yourself and be open to whatever life has ahead of you.
I love that, and wanted to ask as we wrap up, what does 2023 have in store for both of you? If we are, first of all, I'm going to ask you to promise now that you will come talk this time next year.
Yes.
All right. So what is your one goal, personal, professional, that you would both like to achieve?
Well, the word for me this year is growth, because it applies in every facet of my life. For WorkTorch, it's really a growth year for us. Like we mentioned earlier, there's a number of things that we've got to get right before we really hit everything running, going really, really fast. But this is the year that we're really focused on growth as much as possible and growing the business. And then even in my personal life, just wanting to continue to grow as a person and grow in the different areas of my life, health-wise. I want to be able to grow as a mom, as a wife, and so many different facets of my life. So really, that's my goal for 2023.
You took my word. I should have went first. I would also say to growth. That's a big one. But also, I'll choose a different one. I would say just to, but in addition to growing, I think being confident, because I think that these last couple years we have just been working in proving ourselves and proving our worth and proving that our idea is great and all of that. And we're at the position right now where we've proved ourselves and we just need to walk in it and be confident in everything that we do. Being confident in the business, being confident in myself. This is my first founder experience. This is my first time people are addressed like the COO and things like that, these titles. And sometimes I would feel very like imposter syndrome. Yes.
The imposter syndrome. Yeah.
But this year I really want to shake that off and just be confident in who we are, who I am, and where we're headed.
I love it. And what I love about talking to both of you is the energy between both of you and how supportive you are of each other. I think it's such a gift to see that among two founders and really a great strength. Where can our listeners find out more about WorkTorch?
Well, they can find us at worktorch.io. Our website has also changed, so worktorch.io. And then we're on all the social media channels, which Angie knows well.
You can find us on Facebook, even TikTok, worktorch.io, on Instagram and Twitter. It's worktorch_. So find us there. You can find myself, Angela Muhwezi, on all handles. Feel free to reach out. Love to connect with fellow founders or people who may be interested in any facet of our journeys and learning more about yours as well. Follow us at WorkTorch.
You both are such queens. I love you.
Oh, you are awesome.
Thank you for coming on She Ventures this year, and we will see each other
Wonderful.
again next year.
100%. Thank you.
You've been listening to She Ventures. Like what you heard? You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe and sign up for our newsletter so you never miss a show.